Stock investors are still assigning a 0% chance, in my opinion, that Trump will actually implement the reciprocal tariffs that were announced on April 2nd, 2025, having learned a lesson from what happened. Since the odds are zero based on the current stock market levels, there is consequently a 0% chance also assigned to a tit-for-tat trade war with foreign countries raising their tariffs for U.S. exports in response to U.S. tariff hikes. Trump has extended the date when he will implement the reciprocal tariffs for countries without new trade deals from July 9th to August 1st. That was in response to not being able to finalize hardly any agreements prior to July 9th, other than Vietnam draft agreement and an agreement with the UK. The announcement of those reciprocal tariffs made on April 2nd caused a major decline in the S&P 500 index the next day of 322.44 points to 5,074.08. That was the close on April 3rd. The S&P 500 had actually started to decline from an intraday high of 6,147.43 hit on February 19th, 2025, based on a flood of news about tariffs and the threats of more to come. The slide continued through April 8th when the S&P closed at 4,982.25. The low during this period was hit on April 7th at 4,835.04 intraday, or about a 21.34% decline from the February 19th intraday high. And I would attribute all or almost all of that decline to the tariff news. The S&P had a meaningless negative reaction to Trump's new tariff threats announced over the weekend and yesterday, and closed at 6,300 yesterday, down only 0.79%. I'm expecting inflation to rise starting in July as more companies raise prices to U.S. consumers to recoup all or most of the Republican tariff taxes paid by them for imports. Tariff taxes paid by U.S. importers are just another component for them of input cost inflation. U.S. consumers do not need to be reminded how businesses will respond when inflation causes a spike in their input costs. CPI increased by 8.5% for the 12 months ending in March 2022, mostly due to the Fed keeping expansionary monetary policies known as ZIRP and quantitative easing, even as inflation was surging in 2021 and into 2022. And the Fed had created an excessive amount of money during that period through its QE program, with the U.S. money supply going up about $5.73 trillion to $21.722 trillion over just a 2-year period ending in March of 2022, or a 35.8% increase in just 2 years of the U.S. money supply. And the supply chain disruptions caused by the pandemic at a time when consumer demand, suppressed by the pandemic, started to surge. Problematic inflation would have happened regardless of who occupied the White House during that time period. I would add that the inflation started to come down a lot, even though the budget deficit surged starting in 2023 and 2024. Inflation resulting from the Republican tariff taxes will go beyond actual consumer purchases of products, and I'm going to give an example of what I mean by this. NBC News recently provided a detailed report on how the existing Republican tariff taxes would increase the price of new homes. I will cite that article in the More section below. This study found, quote, the total cost of building a mid-range single-family home could rise by more than $4,000, an estimate that industry experts who reviewed the analysis called conservative, end quote. The Republican tariff taxes that will solely cause that increase in the new home price are not disclosed in the purchaser's settlement sheet, unlike a sales tax would if you bought a product. There is no receipt showing how much of the price increase is caused by the Republican tariff taxes, and consequently, the Republicans can claim that no cost is passed on to the U.S. consumer from their U.S. Tariff taxes. While I'm living in a home that I built in 1982 and I had to use cash to buy the lot and to build the home since the 15-year mortgage rate was then over 16% with points, and I have no plans on buying a new one. My feet are sort of in concrete here. You might say the increase in the cost for a new home will not impact me. Well, that would be an error. The increased cost in building materials resulting from the Republican tariff taxes will increase my home insurance premium that is based on the cost to replace what is damaged or destroyed from insured perils, primarily wind and fire. Due to the non-tariff inflation earlier this decade, insurance costs for my automobiles, home, and umbrella insurance policies went up, and I noticed this, 70% in the 2 years ending in July 2024. 70%. So yes, I will be paying the Republican tariff taxes in years to come by higher insurance premiums, not only for my home insurance, but also for my automobiles as well.